We've got more campus lunacy, this time, once again, from the New York Times. It published an op-ed agreeing with campus rioters and protesters. It even suggests that free speech should be restricted with new, quote, parameters to protect the marginalized, like illegal immigrants. Here's what's going on. New York University professor Ulrich Baer, he wrote this, quote, "The idea of freedom of speech does not mean a blanket permission to say anything to anybody that anybody thinks. It means balancing the inherent value of a given view and putting parameters around that to make sure the marginalized are protected." Joining me now, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Who sets up those? Who gets to decide the parameters?
The listener gets to decide what he wants to hear, and the speaker gets to decide what she wants to say, and the government has no role in it. That's not me. That's the Supreme Court of the United States on the First Amendment. Now, NYU is a private institution. They can do what they want on their private property. But these two instances, the white supremacists at Auburn's owned by the state of Alabama, and Coulter at the University of California, that's owned by the state of California. The states are required, and everything they own is required to abide the First Amendment.
All right.
So does the First Amendment protect hate speech?
Yeah.
It absolutely does.
Yeah, but only liberals, but not conservative free speech, right? I mean...
Yeah, you know, I condemned the Bush administration when they created free speech zones. If you wanted to say something, you wanted the president to hear, you had to be 3 miles away, which obviously means he can't hear it. And the New York Times condemned them as well. Today, the New York Times is supporting the concept of free speech zones and no free speech zones on college campuses.
I mean, cut it out with the zones. I mean, weren't the founding fathers against censorship-type parameters? I just want you to understand, stay with me on this. I want to get you all excited here. They protected extreme speech because with that sunlight, you can find out and flush out the people who really hate freedom. The KKKers, the people who do racial injustices, or the Nazis or Islamic jihadis. You want to hear that hate speech because you know who those guys are.
You are exactly right. If hate speech is criminalized, it will go underground, and you won't know who the haters are. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to encourage and facilitate open, wide, robust, virulent, I'm quoting Justice Douglas now in a famous case involving free speech, even vicious speech, because the conflict of ideas produces the sunlight of which you speak. Challenge people's truths. Don't treat these kids in colleges like they're snowflakes. Not my word, but the word today. Expose them to all sorts of ideas. The First Amendment was not written to protect speech we like because we like it. It doesn't need protection. It was written to protect speech we hate and fear.
But
that's why we have it.
Howard Dean said Ann Coulter does not have a constitutional right to basically say hate speech.
Well, Howard Dean is absolutely wrong. He's a physician. He's not a lawyer or a constitutional scholar. And the Supreme Court has been very clear that hate speech is protected. I'm not even so sure that her speech is hateful. But whatever they paid her to say, they have an obligation now to provide that forum, to let her speak, to make sure she's not drowned out, and because the First Amendment has two sides, to make sure those who want to listen to her can hear her.
That's the point. Those conservative groups are now apparently suing the University of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, because they're saying it violates our constitutional rights. Do they have a standing here? Do they have a case?
I thought they didn't, but when I read the documents today, I've come to a different view. Their argument is that Ann Coulter was banned because the administrators hate her message. That's called viewpoint discrimination. Princeton can do it, private university. A university owned by the state cannot, because the First Amendment comes into play. So if they can prove, the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, who are students,
groups,
correct, if they can prove that the University of California exercises viewpoint discrimination against conservatives like Ann Coulter or David Horowitz, another one whose speech was canceled there, they'll have a very substantial case. On the other hand, the litigation itself should be enough to provoke them to permit Ann to speak and to protect her and to protect the listeners.
I think UC Berkeley is afraid. They feel like they don't have the smarts to take her on. What a debate that would be to have a UC Berkeley professor take on Ann Coulter, right?
It would be a great show.
Why not just
An absolute great show, and Fox should cover it.
They should just do it.